Welcome back to Black Health and Society. We're going to talk about how education impacts health outcomes. Last lecture, we talked about how government supported and enforced redlining, restrictive racial covenants, and highway construction led to a sicker Black community and healthier white communities due to increased industrial waste, highway pollution, decreased access to green space and fresh produce, and increase in the wealth gap between Black and white families. Today, we're focusing specifically on the disparities in education access leading to the disparities in health outcomes. Before I jump into the topic, I have to be real for a second. I hear people constantly talking about, oh, slavery was such a long time ago. First of all, Harriet Tubman died in 1913. Okay. Secondly, the effects of slavery and the downstream effects continue to impact us today. You can't talk about education without talking about slavery leading to segregation. And first, we need to talk about the fact that Ruby Bridges was the first African American child to integrate the formerly whites-only elementary school, William France Elementary School in New Orleans. She had to be escorted to school by federal marshals while white families were protesting her existence. I need to mention that this is Ruby Bridges today. She is 70 years old. She is younger than the current president. He's like 8 years older than her. What was done to Black people is atrocious, and of course, no one wants to talk about it, but we have to understand we are living the timeline today. All of these stories, all of this history was not long ago. Now that we don't technically have federal government enforced redlining racial covenants, we do have school districts that have been given the authority by local governments to determine and enforce geographic boundaries. So again, your kids' education is dependent on where they live. Enforce? What do you mean enforce? Well, it's pretty serious. How serious? Well, serious enough for someone to go to jail if they go outside of that. There are actually two moms, one Tanya McDowell and another Kelly Williams Bolar. They actually went to jail for sending their kids to different school districts. Tanya McDowell served 5 years in prison for falsifying her residence and enroll her son in a better school. She and her son were homeless and they didn't have an address to enroll into the good school that she wanted him to go to. She was charged federal crimes, criminal charges for that, and went to jail. Kelly Williams Bolar was a mom in Ohio, and she also went to jail for sending her daughters, to a different school. And she said she just wanted them to be safe and sent them to a different school that had better quality of education. She went to jail too. So again, kind of put it back. Slavery, down the line, segregation, redlining, racially restrictive covenants, and now local school districting boundaries. They've caused disparities in access to education for Black children. So what does this look like? So, 1, Black children are more likely to attend a school that is underfunded. Number 2, Black children are more likely to attend a large school with large class sizes. Number 3, Black children are more likely to attend a school with less advanced placement options. And number 4, Black children are more likely to attend a school with less qualified teachers or teachers in training. There's been a whole body of research that shows really the factors that consistently influence how well students do. And consistently, the four things are having smaller schools, smaller classes, access to a challenging curriculum, and having more highly qualified teachers. And Black kids are less likely than other kids to have any of these. In our schools, the average school size is generally twice the size of the schools that are predominantly white. In our schools, on average, the class sizes are 15% larger than schools that are predominantly white. And again, as I stated, typically in schools that are predominantly minority in attendance or Black in attendance, typically we have teachers that are in training, which I can attest to that too. A lot of teachers that went through training in the school that I went to, and also there tends to be less curriculum that is offered at advanced placement. And what about the thing that I said about underfunded, being underfunded? Well, let's look at where funding comes from. Funding from schools come from a combination of state and property taxes. There's some federal aid, but it's pretty small if you look at the breakdown. And again, going back to what we talked about with redlining and property values and property taxes, and how those things contribute to the difference in resources that are available at a school, the money that's coming to schools. There has been a lot of legislative effort to try to put these very complex calculators in place to give more aid to schools that are in areas with lower property taxes. But still, consistently, the studies show that many of the schools that are in minority communities are still underfunded. There was a study done in 2022 from the Public Policy Institute of California. I talk about California because I'm in California. And basically, it still showed that lower wealth districts have received nearly 60% less state modernized funding than higher wealth districts since 1998. Another thing that's impacting our access to education is how Black students are treated. Oh no, she's going to talk about race and bias. Yes, I'm going to talk about race and bias. We understand that Black students are more likely to receive harsher disciplinary action for equal behavior. There have actually been studies that have shown this, and I'm just going to walk us through maybe two examples. So one of the studies, they basically took teachers in California. There are about 100 to 200 teachers, K through 12th grade, and they had the teachers read stories, little vignettes of classroom behavior incidents, like throwing an object or talking back to the teacher, and then they had the teachers rate the behavior and indicate like how severe the students should be disciplined. Okay. So many of the vignettes were identical. The only thing that was different was that some of the names were different, like the same story, same behaviors, but for some instances, they named the child Jake, for example, and then some they named Jamal, so a more Black sounding name. And in this study, the authors found that identical misbehavior was perceived by teachers as being more severe, irritating, and troublesome, and was recommended for harsher discipline if the kid's name was racially coded as Black. Yes. Another study showed where they took 135 preschool teachers and they showed them 30-second video clips of racially diverse groups of kids playing. And the teachers were told, oh, watch for misbehavior. Even though there was actually no misbehavior present, they were told that. And what the researchers did was they used this eye tracking software, and it showed that the teachers tended to spend more time looking at the black kids for they were trying to find that misbehavior, especially the black boys. So that definitely impacts our kids' the black experience in education. We know that suspension and expulsions are correlated to dropping out of high school, not completing high school, not achieving higher education. So if it's already perceived that we will misbehave at higher rates, we're going to get that type of disciplinary action. So how does education impact health, though? Okay, so we talked about, yes, access to education is different for black kids, but okay, what does that have to do with health? Because, I'm the doctor, so what does it have to do with health? Well, it has a lot to do with health. Education level is a strong predictor of health outcomes. People with more education tend to live longer, they have lower rates of disease, and they tend to have a better sense of managing mental health. Well, why? I'm telling you, it matters, but how? Well, first, when you have education, you have more access to resources. So that's going to be access to better jobs that don't put you in toxic environments, access to money that provides you with housing that's safe, and health insurance and other resources. So you have more access to resources. And along with those lines, typically, if you have more access to resources, you also have more access to healthier lifestyles. So, gym memberships and fresh produce and living in neighborhoods where you have access to green space. Education also impacts our health literacy. Navigating the medical system is difficult already. So if you have more education, you're more likely to ask questions and be able to communicate in a way that you and your physician can work together to improve your health. If you have more health literacy, you're more likely to understand health risks and how to avoid them. So we're wrapping up now. Essentially, just kind of in summary, education is a social determinant of health that basically is influenced by political determinants of health. The political determinants of health have caused disparities in access to education, leading to health disparities, particularly in the Black community. A lot of the things that are impacting us still are if you kind of work backwards, we're talking about the impacts from slavery to segregation to redlining, racial covenants, and then just local government with districting and the remnants of all of those things and how that has contributed to where we live. And where we live directly impacts our access to education. And we know that education and how we access it impacts our health overall. So I hope you learned something. I hope you continue to follow along. We have a few more lectures and we'll have some guest speakers in the future, but we just have to talk about these things. So I'm going to keep talking about them, even if nobody's listening. But here we are. All right, I'm Dr. B, and I'll see you next time.